The market rally mostly rolls on as most stocks are higher once again. Welcome to Power Lunch, everybody. Alongside Kelly, who you just saw, I am Brian. The NASDAQ hoping to make it 6 gains in a row. That would be the longest winning streak in 9 months, and markets have soared off the April 7th lows. The S&P 500 popping a staggering 21% since the intraday low that day, with some specific stocks surging, Kelly, in a month. NRG, Palantir, Microchip, and many more rocketing.
Look at that, NRG up 60%. It's crazy. So where might be the next big opportunity? We're live at the Sohn conference, where some big money managers are presenting their best ideas all afternoon long. And stock trading platform eToro is a new stock itself, and it is soaring at about 28% off the IPO price, Brian. Not bad, and much better than it would have gone at the original IPO date. I imagine they pushed it back amid the tariff drop.
Yes, and I want to be clear, this is not an electric lawnmower. This is not an eToro. This is eToro.
I have one of those, you know.
I know you do. This is You're such a nerd.
It actually works. It's self-propelled. It works very well, but I tried it for a little while.
And by the way, the nerd reference is a shout out to a friend who's watching the show. We're nerds, and we're proud of it. All right. So we just hit how well our markets have done lately, but here's kind of an RBI for all you market nerds out there. Many other countries have made you more money than the United States this year. Our markets just slightly positive for 2025. Not bad anyway, given what we had a month ago. But break out your investing globe and take a gander at this. The ETF that tracks the German market, it's up 28% this year. My God. Mexico's ETF up 26%. And Brazil, which, by the way, I wrote about over a year ago as a prediction, but it's been a complete dog, is finally showing some life, up 26% so far this year. And some smaller markets, more obscure markets, are up even more. Your first guest today has probably been to every single one of those markets and those countries. He has logged billions of miles on airplanes. He is a trailblazer in investing in emerging markets. We're talking, of course, about Mark Mobius, the Mobius Emerging Opportunities Fund, joining us now. Mark, it's great to have you on. You could be in Nepal or in San Francisco. I have no idea. Welcome. It's good to see you. Why do you think we're seeing this huge push into global markets? We only highlighted a couple, but pretty much every major and emerging market is actually outperforming the United States.
Well, I think the main reason is because Trump has opened up the whole world in the sense that people are now realizing that anything is possible with Trump. And as a result of his trade negotiations with China, now China is not the only game in town. We're now seeing all these other countries entering the export market and being able to compete. So it's really very exciting to see what's happening around the world. And probably the most exciting place now is India, because India is going to be taking the place of China in many, many areas. And we've already seen companies like Apple and others come to India to manufacture and export. So India, Vietnam, Taiwan, Turkey, those are the ones that are looking very interesting for us at this stage. But as you pointed out, there are many other markets around the world that are doing better than the U.S.
So, I mean, although the U.S. has come back, so maybe it's taken a little bit of the wind out of the sails of this Sell America idea, Mark. What did you think about that at the time, and what do you think about that as a risk going forward?
Well, you know, one of the things we've discovered, and one of the reasons why our new fund encompasses not only emerging markets, but the U.S. market, because many of the U.S. companies are actually emerging market companies. Well, let's take Apple, for example. Where do they manufacture all their products? Where do they sell all their products? Emerging markets are a big part of this company. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at. We're not only looking at the emerging markets, but at companies in America that are benefiting from the growth in emerging markets.
Would there be any other examples of that?
Another good example would be Microsoft. Microsoft is exporting its software around the globe. And that would be another good example of a company that is really a global company, not a U.S. company.
The richest man, the richest man in India is going to be meeting with Donald Trump in, I think, Doha, Qatar in a few days. There's a lot going on there. I used to trade commodities in a life a long time ago, and you know, the one thing I liked about India was that it was rule of law. They used British law, and you could actually enforce a contract. In China, it was tough. Sometimes the people would just vanish. You'd sue them, and they would just disappear. But India has a lot of problems, Mark. I mean, they don't have a lot of electricity. the infrastructure for supply chains is, we want to believe it's there, but it's not. It is now the most populous nation in the world. How risky, though, is India as an investment? A lot of opportunity, but I would imagine a lot of risk, too.
Well, the big problem with India is bureaucracy. As you know, they inherited this incredible bureaucracy from the British, and the party that took over, the Congress party took over, perpetuated that bureaucracy. But Modi, the new prime minister, has done a tremendous job in cutting through a lot of the bureaucracy, but still there's a lot to be done. And he's digitizing the entire economy. First of all, by getting digitized identity cards for everybody, so money can be transferred directly to bank accounts, even to the poorest people in the country. But this takes time. I call it the United States of India because you have all these states, many of them with different languages, both written and spoken languages. So to unify this country is quite a job, but still the opportunities are there because you have a lot of very smart people. And as you say, it's the most populous country in the world now. We figure about 1.2 billion people compared to, I would say, now India's bigger than China. China maybe 800 to 900 million.
Wow. It's a huge difference and potentially a very bullish development in many ways. Where are you less enthusiastic, Mark? As a lot of investors are doing their homework on international stocks as they see some of this outperformance, where would you kind of, steer them clear of?
Probably Latin America, with the exception of Brazil and Mexico maybe. But Latin America has got a long way to go to reform and to change. Of course, a prime example of reform is Argentina. That's done very, very well as a result of reforms, but the market has outpaced all these reforms, and it's maybe a little bit too late to get in there at this stage, but it's worth looking at.
Yeah, I mean, what's the sort of the kind of the twisted joke? And I was bullish on, not that it matters what I think, bullish on Brazil. They say that Brazil's the country of the future, always has been, always will be, because they have their issues. They can't get out of their own way, but they do have a lot of power. Right, Petrobras. Does that change how you view Brazil? The fact that they've now discovered all these energy riches. Petrobras is sitting on some of the biggest and wealthiest oil reserves in the world. If they could kind of just get out of their own way, they might be able to monetize that.
Well, as you know, Petrobras is an incredible company, but you also must know that there was a big scandal surrounding Petrobras, and the reason why there was a change in government as a result of the corruption in Petrobras. Now, hopefully that's over, but that's absolutely right. Brazil has all these oil reserves, but more importantly, Brazil has agricultural resources, which is tremendous. And of course, Brazil has digitized a lot of the economy. We've been looking at central bank digital currencies, and Brazil is way ahead in that regard. So there's a lot of interesting things, but I must emphasize that we can't take this country as a whole. In other words, we've got to look at individual companies. And we are finding some good bargains in Brazil on an individual company basis.
Just a parting question, Mark. Do you have a position on gold, on any of the kind of cryptos, on any of these almost kind of global currencies, amid all of these currency cross currents that could be quite significant this year?
Well, gold is a favorite of mine. I believe everybody should have some gold, maybe 10% of the portfolio, regardless of where the price is at any point in time. It's good at dollar cost average into gold. As regards to crypto, it looks like the U.S. is bound to become a leader in crypto, and that is going to be very important going forward. I personally am not a big fan of crypto, but members of my team are convincing me that we've got to do more in crypto. So we're looking at it more carefully. I'm particularly interested in the crypto exchanges rather than the coin itself.
Yeah. Quickly, do you still love Mercado Libre, one of the top holdings in your fund, MELI on the NASDAQ?
Yes, it's an incredible company, very well done. There's a good example of a Brazilian company that's doing quite well. Of course, it started in Argentina, but now it's big in Brazil.
All right. Mark, great to check in with you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Mark Mobius with Mobius Emerging Opportunities Fund. Staying international, Morgan Stanley today doing a deep dive on the Chinese AI market.